All right, all right, all right. As Kevin Hart would say, we are live. Do you want to give us a juicy introduction, my friend?
Well, the juicy introduction is that this is a new system that we're trying, and I'm sorry for the noise in the background. That's my children getting ready to go to school because it's super early in the morning in Japan.
Yeah, well, and
What
actually,
time is it where you are, boss?
it's 4 p.m. here in the great state of Wisconsin, and it is
Nice.
a frigid. What is it like minus like 4 or something today? I don't even remember what it is, but I know it's very very cold here. I know it's also cold over there in Japan as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
a blistering 27 degrees for you.
Yes, 27 degrees. The problem here is the high humidity. It's extremely wet, like 60% humidity here.
So actually, it's warmer here than it is by you, but we also have the same issue here in Wisconsin, which is a very high humidity, and so that cold when it hits your face, it smacks. It smacks quite hard.
Yeah, and it's not as windy today, which helps, but the wind is supposed to pick up later on today, and we're going to have, gusts up to 10 miles an hour, which makes it much chillier. I feel
Absolutely.
sorry for the kids. My kids go to a school that requires uniforms,
Ah,
and the uniform for the girls is a skirt, and the uniform for the boys is shorts. And there's no long pants option for either gender.
yeah. Well,
So
leggings for both of them, it seems. Well, so let's go ahead and get started in here. I just want to say welcome in Kush Bush, welcome in Eric, Fernando, and Svenja, who are all joining us for the live stream right in the start at the top of the hour. We have already have a couple questions generated, so I'm going to read some of those, and then when we don't have some questions, I'll have our in-house producer Linus here entertain me with some more questions that he has, basically mooching off of free lesson time. So Kushbush says, I'm new to playing shakuhachi and found out that I'm urushi sensitive. Yikes.
ooh,
Okay, any recommendations to lower the reaction? I've heard that washing the flute with soap and lukewarm water could help. So this is unfortunate. Not everybody. It's actually in this particular allergy is very rare. If you're allergic to mangoes, you tend to have the same sort of allergic reaction as well. Um, as urushi cures over time, it this actually won't have a problem. You won't have a reaction anymore once it actually cures. So it seems that when whatever shakuhachi you picked up, it basically just wasn't cured all the way through. So when if you ever buy flutes in the future, just make sure that you ask that maker, is the urushi cured? I need it to be 100% all the way done because I'm sensitive to the lacquer. But for right now, as far as you having the reaction, yeah, just soap and lukewarm water, just to help, to help it, not overreact. A little bit of lotion and stuff like that as well. As far as the flute goes, it's just gonna take more time for that urushi um, uh, to actually solidify all the way. Now there are non or there's hypoallergenic ones where they're using different types of lacquers on the inside, and some people are using like cashew based stuff. And you could ask for an alternative, but really it's not necessary as long again as that lacquer is cured. So if my one of my teachers was highly allergic to urushi, he couldn't even walk into a maker's shop without having a reaction. He was so allergic to urushi. He plays shakuhachi just fine. So there's your answer for that. Eric here says Jinashi instruments are one thought. The urushi should be cured for over a year to diminish the response. So urushi doesn't need to cure that long for it to be done. Typically, if it's done in the proper urushi box, it only takes about a week or two. Jinashi instruments still use urushi lacquer as well. The G paste doesn't have any effect on that, even though it does also use urushi as well. Fernando, hello. And Herbert Haas, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Taihei Monty Levison uses a non allergenic compound. Yes, he does. Fernando, could you tell us something about repaired flutes from crack? That sounds funny. What kind of care do they need? Yeah, well, when your flute is taking crack, well, you got to put it in a program right away. Okay, that's the first thing. Um, but in all seriousness, so um, basically, so flutes that are repaired, well, as long as the repair job is done well, it actually gives you a better instrument, in my opinion, because once the instrument's cracked and it has all the properly inlaid bindings, it's not gonna crack again. And it's basically just a level of security. Now I'm sure you could find a way. Like you could test that theory and put it out into the Sahara Desert and then go, look, it cracked. The bindings didn't work. But it's like, of course, because you treated it like absolute garbage. But once these bindings are on there, it really secures the flute from ever undergoing a future crack from the humidity of expanding and contracting, blowing inside the flute, and so on and so forth. But there's no extra or additional care that a shakuhachi would need that has already had a crack that is now bound that a regular shakuhachi would need. It's about the same there. Do you have any thoughts on that, Linus?
Well, I think that, obviously it's an organic instrument, and so any instrument that's made out of organic material has to be cared for, but we do
Yeah.
have a long tradition of flutes that have developed, small cracks that get binding on them
Yeah.
and then last for decades,
Yep.
properly cared for.
Yep.
It's similar, I think, in some ways to like high level guitars or high level high level violins, things like that, because there's some movement in the material after the instrument is created. And so there is a period at the beginning of an instrument's life where things are still sort of settling in. And even the best makers can't really tell when they're looking at the materials how it's going to move in that first couple of years. And so that's why in luthery, there's the tradition of adding sound posts
Yep.
and adding additional bracing inside instruments just for that. And I think the same with shakuhachi. I think those bindings, although we tend to think of them as being fixes for problems, they actually in some ways are similar to like a sound post in that once the instrument's bound, the 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 sound of the instrument can sometimes go ahead and expand from there.
Mm.
Because oftentimes the instruments that have, like the really old instruments that have a lot of bindings, are the ones that have this rich and powerful sound that we're always looking for. So I don't worry too much about it with my instruments. I have one instrument that has no bindings at all, and then I have some instruments that have like half a dozen.
Yep.
And I think that they, the ones that are sort of heavily bound,
Yeah.
in my very limited experience, are better. They play better for me personally. So I don't know, but I
Yeah.
think that there's a long tradition of it in shakuhachi that it shouldn't alarm someone too much if their instrument has a lot of bindings or needs a binding.
Yeah,
Shouldn't
I
be too
I
focused
would be
on it.
worried about surface level bindings where like if it's bindings that are done improperly, like they didn't use nylon as the base and it's just like a cheap rattan on top of it.
Mm.
Those are the type of things that I would be worried about for bindings, and it's very easy to look at a shakuhachi that had a very bad binding job on it, and you want to avoid those. But there's nothing wrong to if a flute cracks. Yeah, it sucks, and it really can really bother a person. I've had multiple flutes that have had 8, 10 bindings on them, and they're absolutely fantastic instruments. There's nothing wrong with them, as long as the bindings are done well. So
Yeah, I also think that unlike the luthery world where if an instrument cracks,
yeah,
they come back to it's your fault, right? You didn't care for the instrument properly. You didn't keep it hydrated. You didn't keep a dampet in the case. That sort of thing.
yeah,
With shakuhachi, it's more just, hey, that's bamboo, right?
Yeah, now that
Sometimes the bamboo, you do everything right and you still get a crack.
yeah, that can happen, but like I do think that is some personal liability when it comes to bamboo, because there is a process that can really help prevent this, and the preventative measure is the plastic bag, keeping the shakuhachi in there, blowing in hot air, and sealing it up afterwards. That has been a proven method for keeping these instruments happy and healthy for a long time,
Yeah.
keeping them off of crack. So, Eric says here, I have a question about mold that has formed in a few of my jinashi and jiari instruments that I keep in plastic containers with water. I tried to keep the humidity high, and I guess some spores grew. How to clean up the instruments of the mold? So the first thing is that usually mold isn't just forming just because there's water. There has to be some sort of bacteria or something else, right? There's something else going on there. So if you're not cleaning out your instrument and swabbing it through when you're done, that's usually one of the tall tale signs that of why you're going to be forming mold and why mold has formed inside your instrument. So do keep it clean. The urushi actually functions as a protectant from that. It's a sealant from the bamboo and the outside world so that mold doesn't form. But in this case, since it's already formed, just use distilled vinegar, wash it through, and then just kind of wipe it out the best you can. And you might have to do that a couple times and then just run it through with water as well. Always drying after every single time you do this, because again, you don't want the bamboo to get soaked up so much and then you ruin that. You ruin that as well. Why are you just now joining the Shoden Trial Level, our in-house producer? What is going on here?
Well, because something has gone on with my YouTube. I logged into YouTube yesterday and had none of my recommended channels, had none of my usual, feed coming up. Like I got a banner at the top that said, try searching for something to get started, like as if I had never been on YouTube before.
I feel like this is just a conspiracy theory. Is it because you didn't win a flute?
No.
Okay.
And to be honest, I think, you know how suspicious it would look if you said, oh, we're going to have our flute drawing. Oh, look, the winner is Linus. How suspicious that would look.
Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
Exactly. That's why my life is registered. See, no one's going to notice if someone who has the name Sci-Fi Heroine or whatever it is that she used, if someone like that wins, everyone's going, oh, congratulations. And I'll just quietly be like, ha, 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 that's mine. But, no, honestly, I just did it because I'm looking at Taizu Shakuhachi's page, and I cannot see the community tab.
Oh, interesting.
So I've got,
I think it's
videos, shorts, live, membership, podcasts, etc. No community tab.
Oh, it should be posts.
Posts. Well, it didn't used to be posts.
Yeah, it used to be community.
It's really great. Thanks for that, YouTube.
Yeah.
Thanks for just renaming stuff.
Well, that's what they do, right? This is what they do.
And my other channel, the Yozan Mei Shakuhachi channel, which has nothing on it yet, is also similarly blank. Like, welcome to YouTube. Like I just joined or something. I've had a YouTube account for like 20 years. I don't really understand what's going on. But anyway, I can see them now.
Interesting.
Now that I know that they're not called community anymore.
Yeah, they're posts now. With that being said, we just finished writing up a bunch of posts for this month and most of next month as well. So we hope that you engage with the now YouTube post section of the Taizu Shakuhachi page. We'd also encourage you to sign up for our Discord membership. It's completely free, so you can go in there, hang out with people who love shakuhachi just as much as you do. There's actually recently, would you say that there's a big increase of people just chatting and talking and hanging out on the Discord?
Yeah, there's been some really in-depth conversations going on Discord, a lot more than usual, both that are kind of serious discussions about, schools of shakuhachi and philosophy of shakuhachi, but then also like some silly, meme stuff as well. Memes that are funny only to shakuhachi players. But it's a lot more active than it was, say, prior to Christmas when things were a little quieter. And I also think that it's been very good to we've added a few additional activities that have been going on. The hangouts that are hosted by Svenja, and also the open mics and the monthly master classes are also adding a lot more activity to the Discord channel right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I already see a bunch of people on here that are that I have not given a role yet, who are new to the Discord as well. So I'll be giving them roles right now, and welcome in all those people. So very cool to see this. And I really like the balance of the intensity of like seriousness and then fun, playful stuff.
Sure. And I actually really, one of the things I really like about Discord is that our community is not so large that when you are gone from Discord for a day or two, you're lost.
Oh yeah,
You know, I've
yeah,
had that experience with other Discords where you're gone for 2 days. You would have to read 150 messages to catch up.
yeah.
That's not the case. Our Discord is still small enough that it's a group of. It feels more like talking with a group of friends rather than talking on a giant nationwide message board. And even though most of these people I've never met, when you are on an online community, you start to feel like people, or like what you can expect a person to comment on, people's levels or areas of expertise. And it really shines in Discord. There's some people in our group that are very knowledgeable about stuff that I don't know anything about.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's very,
Yeah, and
yeah.
I like that too, because it's actually some places we can have a disagreement on places and say, well, I might not agree with you fully, but I see your position, and it makes sense to me why you think that, and so on, and it seems to be like a valid way of understanding it and whatever. So there's also diversity of thought that's going on in the group as well, which I love seeing. We even have a couple shamisen players hanging out who like to chime in every once in a while.
That's cool. And I think that it still has a very friendly vibe. It's not, there's no hostility even amongst the people that disagree. And also, I really like the fact that maybe it's just me, I've gotten old enough that if I don't want to, or I don't really agree with what's being argued, I feel confident that I can say, well, here's my take, and I
Mm-hmm.
won't get fired, won't get flamed to death in our Discord, because that's just not the culture that's going on.
No, the culture of our Discord, and I don't micromanage anything, and I try to stay out of a lot of stuff because I don't want it to just to be the Taidu Overlord channel, but rather a place that people can really discover and grow. Unless the people tag me in something or are asking me specifically this question, and it is really cool to see people figure out things together and learn from each other. And it does seem like it's been in place that people have grown a lot in their shakuhachi walk. So it's an exciting place. So if you're not on there yet, definitely join us there. Linus, can you post that link into the YouTube top chat there for us? That'd be
Well,
very.
we'll see. Maybe.
Well,
Maybe I
we'll see
can.
if it lets you have that option. But anyways, if you're watching this live stream right now, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and stay tuned for that Discord link that's coming up in the top chat right now. And of course, you can always ask your questions in live stream. We pretty much answer every question that we get. Sometimes we might not tell you how to do everything, but if we'll at least break down the concept for you if it's a very technical question.
Yeah, we've only had, I mean, very, very few uh, moments of mod hammer having to be used in the Discord. It's been remarkably trouble free, and it's a very friendly place, especially if you're new to the instrument and you are saying you may have a question that you feel is incredibly silly, but we're more than happy to answer those questions, and also to kind of support people in the first difficult stages of playing the shakuhachi, because the learning curve in shakuhachi early on can be quite steep if you're going it by yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Like, and not a lot of people are autodidacts, and I think that they have to, like, we have to be aware of that. Like, I'm really good at teaching myself things, and even then, I love being with other people, learning from people, and being in community, because I thrive way more in it. Because it just, there's so much propulsion that you get from that. So highly recommended for people if they do want to go at it more alone, but they would like some community support. Just further uh, showcases that the Discord is a great and helpful place for that.
Yeah, when you've been playing the instrument, trying, like really trying and taking lessons for 2 years, and you still can't do, something like, for example, Muraiki is the classic case, right? I've been playing for 2 years and I still don't have a decent Muraiki. And it's really great to have a community of people who say, it's normal, dude. You're fine. you're okay. Not a problem. And that's one of the best things about Discord, is that you find out that everybody is wading through the difficulties and trying to figure out what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong.
Absolutely.
You mentioned earlier the vinegar, and there was one thing in our community tab, which or posts, I guess they're called now. When you do the vinegar, don't forget about your finger holes. I think a lot of us have a tendency to run a swab through the flute, maybe wipe off the utaguchi, but we don't often clean the finger holes, and there can be a lot of accumulated goop there.
Goop.
So just, Q-tip dipped in vinegar, wipe out the finger holes. That will help, sort of do a complete clean of your flute.
Good call. Good call on that too.
Yeah, I was kind of horrified the first time I did that with my student flute. I put a Q-tip in there. Oh God, what is that? Like, ew, that came off of my hands. Yikes.
Yeah, that's all of the dead skin cells and stuff, and basically accumulating. And that also, you can just think of those as tone killers. Because remember this,
absolutely.
Because the sound of your instrument, a lot of it comes from the utaguchi, but it also does come from the finger holes and the end too. So when these holes are blocked by something, they have dust build up, grime, sweat, dead skin cells, everything getting clumped up in there. It affects the sound. So you should definitely take care of your instruments, people. Take care of your instruments. Yeah. Don't let them get hooked on crack.
We actually had a discussion the other day about the size of the finger holes, and one of our newer members is a flute maker, and he was talking about we were talking about very long instruments and how it's sometimes you can only play an instrument as long as your arms and finger span will allow.
Sure.
And someone asked, could the holes be further up the instrument? Like, do they have to be all the way down there? And to some extent, yes, but he pointed out that like the size of the hole changes what kind of pitch you're going to get out of it. So you could theoretically move those holes higher up and have smaller holes, but it would be very difficult to then do medi notes on those small holes. And that just shows that, the size of the hole, the opening, has an effect not only on tone, but also on pitch. And so, those holes getting gummed up with finger residue or whatever is changing a lot of the various ramifications of your flute. Like the way it plays changes when you don't clean those out. So yeah, I'm just saying because my flutes were gross.
Yeah. Well, I think everybody, like, if you haven't done it before, take a Q-tip and just run through each one of the holes, and just take a good look and remember that you love your instrument. Right.
Right.
Another thing too about that tuning, like balancing of pitch and stuff, is that you can actually place the holes in fairly interesting places and still tune the instrument perfectly in tune if you have the nodes of the bamboo, the fushi, still inside. Then you can change pitch and balance out pressures a lot. So that bore dimension and changes and stuff can do a lot. And sometimes we really get to really far in the weeds on the making part of shakuhachi, but neither of us make it. We really need to have Nick on here sometime. I
Yeah.
know he keeps saying it, but maybe he should be a guest in a couple weeks or something like that.
Yeah, I think we've that's come up in like I don't know, maybe 50% of the live streams that I've been on with you. We've said we should have Nick on.
Yeah.
I think as neither one of us are makers, and I'm not a person who is mathematically inclined to the level that you need to be to understand the acoustics and the sort of ratios that are going on in flutes. And
Hmm.
so I just listen to the makers, kind of wide-eyed. I'm just like, wow, that you guys have figured this out is amazing. Yeah, we need someone like Nick to come on and kind of demystify it for us.
Yeah, and we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. The problem is Nick is he's in the same time zone as me, but it would be difficult to physically get Nick to the studio because it's quite a ways from Almori to Nara.
Well, I mean, it's not that hard to fly him down for a week and have him stay. We've talked about that already, and so we'll figure it out. We'll have him come down in person. I don't mind having him stay over.
Sounds cool.
So, what else is happening in the shakuhachi world or in the posts now instead of the community tab that we should be aware of or talking about?
Well, there's the very first post there is about disassembling the flute.
Oh
Like an
yeah,
octave flute. And I think, like, I was a Western flute player first. And so, as a Western flute player, of course you disassemble your flute. You
yeah,
disassemble it every day to put it back in the case.
yep,
And, so the shakuhachi is a different mindset that you don't need to disassemble your
yep.
flute every single day. And in fact, you probably shouldn't.
Yeah. So let
So,
me let me show you guys quickly, like just a really great way to, like an easy way to take the flute apart, and what not to do, and then I will also show you just a couple things for care while we're here, since this is that part of the year where it gets dry, gets really cold, and then crackage happens. So, anyways, the all of my flutes are always going to have some sort of leather cap on them, or some sort of cap that's going to protect the utiguchi. That's first and foremost. So when you take the flute apart, make sure that that cap is on, because you don't want to accidentally drop it and then that utiguchi gets hit and now you have a $500 repair. So here, what you're going to do is, if you just take with the right hand or the left hand at the bottom part of on the stick, and just basically all you have to do is just hit right here, just hit against that joint, and you'll see here that it already starts to open up a little bit, like that. Okay, and then you just hit a little bit more, and then that friction will actually help it slide off to a point where all you have to do is just wiggle it off, and there it is. Simple as that. You don't want to pull or to twist or anything like that, because that's going to change the size and it's going to take down the urushi in here. And what will happen is that you'll have a very loose joint. And that is no good either, because then you have air leakage and then you have to get that repaired. Now, in general, you don't want to take this apart so much, because even that kind of friction removal and whatever is still an issue. Now, there's another problem too. Let's say you have one that's really, really tight and it doesn't want to come loose at all. That means that either you're going to have it reshaped again, or it needs just a little bit of Vaseline or some types of cork grease in order to keep that friction less. Now, the thing is, though, is that you don't want to just be lathering that up all the time either, because otherwise, you get the kind of same issue that it's just going to start slipping off, and you run a whole nother muck of issues. Then, after that, of course, every single time you're done, take the flute, place it into the bag, hot air, into the nicer cloth, seal it up, wrap it, and it goes on back onto the rack. And this method is just proven. It just keeps the instrument safe. Now, Eric is saying here that a loose joint used plumber's tape. Now, that is a temporary fix that works for just a little bit of time. It's only meant to be a temporary fix because as you're using plumber's tape, it's going to, of course, expand it, the joint in the inside, and it's not going to last forever. So you do want to get that off to a maker, and it's also not a perfect seal either. It's still going to have
the use of Teflon tape. You know, the ancient Komiso carried in their bags a roll of Teflon tape to make sure they. Teflon tape is. I used to work in a machine shop, and Teflon tape has a lore that is almost equal to the lore of duct tape. Like, it's an amazing thing. It fixes it covers a great many sins, but it is not a fix.
Yeah.
Teflon tape is a Band-Aid.
Yeah, it really is a Band-Aid for a bigger cut, and you know it's the cut needs stitches, right? And you can and so you can wrap it, but you got to take it in. And and honestly, that repair is not expensive, and it doesn't take a long time to do either. It's just a little bit of lacquer.
Yeah, I had 2 flutes repaired by Yozan, 2 small flutes, a 1.4 and a 1.5, that were both, like, the joints were sloppy.
Yeah,
and it was not horribly expensive, but you have to consult with the makers and see, because not every maker wants to do that kind of repair unless it's a flute that they built themselves.
Yes,
so
typically
consult with your maker. Don't just go putting your flutes in a box and sending them off to somebody. You got to ask first.
Yeah.
I think that that's one of the most confusing things for Western woodwind players, because every other woodwind, of course you take it apart.
Yeah.
You know, and because we don't have cases really, most shakuhachi come with a hard case.
So Eric is also saying here, what about nail polish? No, we're not going to use nail polish. Right. No, just don't use nail polish. Nail polish is very brittle. It will just chip off, and just a whole slew of issues there. The other thing too is that if that middle joint at all gets if it gets to a point where it is really tight, you run the risk of actually breaking the wood joint on the inside, and to get the actual middle joint like taken off and repaired is very expensive. That's a huge job to get done. You know, like just having the lacquer redone is like what, $20, something like that. 20 maybe.
It wasn't bad. It was like $20 or $30 each.
Yeah, and then
what do you think about temperature as well? I've noticed that, you know, when it's super cold, most of my flutes joints are very, very tight.
Really? Well, I mean, that happens for me too, but typically it's the opposite. Usually when it gets to colder temperatures, the joint loosens up, and then it you can have it sometimes where you open up your flute case and then the flute just falls apart because it's got so loose. Summer it usually swells and then it tightens. But
you know that 2.0 that I just got from you?
Yes.
I thought that because it has a sort of over lacquer, someone lacquered over the original finish.
Sure.
This is an older flute.
Yep.
And I thought maybe that the joint was just fused, like the joint had been sealed. And that is something that some people do. Some people have the joint sort of permanently closed.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is necessarily a great idea, but it's something that I've seen on quite a few flutes where you can tell that they've added some glue or some lacquer there to hold it together forever. And I thought that's what had happened to this flute. And then just the other day I was playing and I noticed that the joint was open slightly. And a couple of taps and it came apart quite nicely. And I was convinced that flute was glued shut. And I think the difference is it was sitting here in my living room on top of the kotatsu. And
Oh, yeah,
that
because
would
it's
make
yeah, it's okay. So maybe in that case, but like I think that's much more of a humidity issue than it is
mm,
of a temperature issue. Like, because
okay.
yeah, because well, we there. I think we can get really into the weeds in the physics of how bamboo reacts to humidity and whatever, and then humidity plus temperature and how that affects the instrument and the middle joint and whatnot. Um, but yeah, so a lot of things can happen with. I mean, bamboo is a very interesting organic instrument, which comes with a lot of volatility aspects of it.
Yeah, it's a definitely there's a learning curve in taking care of them because they are different from if you've had to take care of, say, a clarinet or you've had to take care of a guitar or something like that. Even though those are both wooden, it's very different.
It will, yeah. Also,
Bamboo doesn't act quite like the hardwoods that we're familiar with.
yeah, and also like the difference between spruce and mahogany, in those different
Right.
types of woods too also react differently. This is the one that actually for me has a little bit of even a loose joint now, but it's still still keeps still keeps closed. The idea is that it should be fairly easy to take apart, like how I just took this one, but it shouldn't be easy to take apart either. So it should be you have to put some effort into it to take it apart, but you don't want it just to be a slip off sort of thing. Um, if that middle joint is really tight, one of the things you can do to help loosen it up is just to take it into the shower room with you and take a really hot shower. Let the steam hydrate the bamboo, and it will come right apart.
Yeah, that's good advice for a lot of wooden instruments that are instruments that are organic materials that just you have to pay attention to the humidity of where you live, and also bear in mind that forced air heat uh, really, even if you
Yeah,
live in a very humid place, forced air heat dries things out.
a lot. Yeah, I have even in this room I have multiple plants in here. Plants are a really great way to keep your rooms humidified. So if you have some put like 2 or 3 potted plants in your room and water them every day. The relative humidity in your room of your room will increase. And then I also have a cold mist humidifier in the room as well, and it keeps the relative humidity in here quite high, which I prefer that myself, because I don't like my skin drying out and becoming all itchy. So it'll make you
So,
feel better too.
how many flutes did you take with you to the United
One,
States?
two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, seven. I took 7 with me.
Okay, I was just wondering. I just would love to be there when you go through TSA.
Oh, the last time was awful. It was not good. Well, uh, we actually missed a flight because the guy at the TSA was basically checking every single bag, and he's like, "What's this? That is lip gloss. Oh, what's this? That is lipstick. Oh, what's this? That is a flute. No, it's not. Like, well, take it out and look at it." Starts looking at it. I never seen no flute like this before.
Yeah,
And then we're finally off to go to our gate, and it's like, oh, our flight already left. Um, hmm. But
yeah.
I only had to do it with one flute this time because I actually have my hard shell case with me, and I showed this before, but I'll show it again. So this is my hard shell case, and they're actually really expensive to buy them new, but you can usually find them on like Yahoo auction. And so this is what I put all of my flutes in, and then I just had them put a fragile thing on it, and then I shipped that off with Delta, and it was no problem. And um, you can tell them what it is, right? And say that these are what they are. They're shakuhachi, they're Japanese bamboo flutes, they're instruments, and they'll put it under that category. So when it goes through TSA and it goes through a customs check, they just go, oh, okay, they're instruments. And typically, because of the whole debacles that have happened with musicians and in times past, they tend to be very extra careful now.
Yeah. Yeah, they've been some of the airlines have been sued quite severely, and also just public relations nightmare for some of the airlines. The I think was it American that the guy wrote the song about American Airlines breaks guitars.
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then they're like, "Well, hold on. We'll pay you the money now." It's like, "No, dude, too late, bro. You were 24 hours late cuz they said he was 24 hours late to like do whatever he needed to do in order for them for him to file the claim. He didn't file the
Right.
claim in enough time. And then he wrote the piece, and then they said, "Oh, we'll pay." He's like, "No, no, you didn't file a claim with me in enough time, so I'm going to keep the piece up." And then they tried to sue him and whatever, and then it basically just backfired even harder. What's that?
Yeah.
What was that? I think we actually mentioned this maybe 4 or 5 podcasts ago, but there's this effect that who is that one woman who had her house had a picture taken of, and then she made a big deal about it, and then like it was for this really small magazine that like only like a few hundred people looked at, but then because the court case got so big, then like millions of people looked at her house after that.
I don't recall this.
Oh gosh, I have to find out what this is called. But it's actually called like it's her name effect. So it got even worse for her. You'll have to look that
Yeah.
up, but house picture effects magazine woman sue. There we go. I hit all the
Is it talking about
Strice.
the Streisand effect?
Yeah, the Streisand effect. That's what the Barbara Streisand effect.
Yes. Yeah, and it basically just unintended consequences by trying to censor information.
Correct.
When you try to censor something, that makes people who otherwise didn't care about that at all go, "Huh? I think I'll Google that."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that with the airlines, they also, I mean, I'm old enough to remember when I was a kid, like my family would travel by airplane just on the eastern seaboard, and my mom used to make me put on a suit to fly.
Oh, yeah. Well, back in the
Like it was
day,
a
I mean,
thing.
yeah. Well, back in the day, flying was a really big deal.
It's
Um,
like I had when I was like 7 or 8 years old, I had to wear like a little suit and a clip-on tie and everything to
well,
go on an airplane.
that's also back when the dinosaurs were still roaming too. It was very different.
Okay, just because you're not in the same room anymore, I'll get you. Okay. As they say in the mob, I know where you live.
Yeah.
So,
I know a guy.
no,
Hey, look, all I gotta do is call Tony, and he'll make your legs all better.
you know, it's funny mentioning the going through TSA, coming back from Almori back to Nara. Um, I've had this experience a lot of times in Japan. People are like, "What's that?" You
Hmm.
say it's a shakuhachi, and Japanese people, they look at me, big white guy, and they go, "What?" And I say, "It shakuhachi desu," and they go, and then they all universally make the gesture. They put their hands in front of their face. They pantomime playing shakuhachi. They go shakuhachi, like they
Yeah.
make the gesture. Yes, and I have to make the gesture as well. Yes, shakuhachi.
I will say that as far as like this I guess stereotype of like Japanese, like most ethnical stereotypes that you can basically like it's not always true, but like in the Japanese case, it's like yeah, they're pretty much all true.
Yeah.
Like, because that
Well,
sort of thing, like that it's the exact same reaction in the exact same mannerism in the same timing, the same pitch of voice. It's really quite incredible.
yeah, it's not hostile. It's just
No, not at
shocked.
all. Not at
They're
all.
just amazed.
Well, another thing that happens too, where I've gone through TSA and having shakuhachis and whatever, is that the like there will be a younger woman or younger guy, and you say it's like, you know, what's the like, what is this? And he goes shakuhachi, and they go a what? But then there will be an older guy who goes, oh, it's fine, just let him go through, right? And because some of the younger generations don't even like remember that, oh yeah, we learned about what a shakuhachi was in third grade, but now it's all like forgotten.
Yeah, I have a friend in the United States who plays the bassoon, and he kind of gets the same feeling. You know, there are a lot of people that are just, it's a what? It's a bassoon.
You know,
What is a
yeah.
bassoon?
So so I have a friend. His name is Chris. He was actually my roommate at the Cleveland Institute of Music, and he plays cello. He's a brilliant cellist, a great transcriber and arranger, and just overall a really good guy. So I hoped at one point that we should be able to perform music together. We never actually got the chance to do that. But at any rate, he told me a story where he was in the airport and he always has somebody who comes up to him and goes, "Excuse me, is that a guitar?" He goes, "No, it's a cello." And they go, "Well, what's that?" Or something. And that's the same conversation, but it's almost every single time he has somebody who comes up to him and goes, "It's a guitar." So he's sitting in line, waiting to for them to call the boarding, and it's okay. All right, zone 3. And then this guy comes up to him. And he goes, "Excuse me, sir." And he goes, "Oh, here it comes." And he goes, "Is that an oboe?" He goes, and he just starts like just like you did. He just dies laughing because he was like, "Here it comes. It's not a guitar. We're gonna have the same conversation." But lo and behold, is that an oboe?
Well, and I'm also confused. That person has a very misunderstood perception of what an oboe looks like. Wow.
Oh.
Yeah.
So,
Actually, I used to fly occasionally with the ukulele, and people mistake ukuleles for violins and vice versa.
sure.
The cases are about the same size, and so I always tell people, they'd say, "It was that a ukulele?" And I'd say, "No, it's a guitar, but I put it in the dryer."
King.
I used to say it shrank in the wash.
Yeah, King Porkchop says it's a tuba. I would have. The only thing that could have been made it better was like, no, it's all my hockey gear actually.
Yeah. Yeah, or like the people that travel with, like if you play something really large, like if, like for example, a sousaphone or something like
Uh
that.
huh.
Yeah, I think that I feel sorry for the folks that their instruments are so large that they have to buy them a seat.
Or they have special like bassists have to do they have special carrying case that they have to buy, and then they send it in the underneath the plane.
Yeah, well, I know that like road cases and travel cases are a big deal for like quality instruments. It's not uncommon to drop $500 on a really nice, airline case if you have a nice guitar. It was really tough
Mm-hmm.
in the ukulele world because, you want to
Mm-hmm.
put a $400 ukulele in a $500 case. Your spouse kind of looks at you like, "We're doing what now?"
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is that actually a lot of those airline cases for like cellos and basses are way more expensive than that. Um, the
Yeah,
Chuck,
guitar has the benefit of being a large market.
yeah. Well, even the thing is though is that the Shakuhachi hard shell cases are usually about $150 to $200. They're not that bad,
Hmm.
and they're pretty good. I mean, they got all of my instruments here in one piece, no problem.
Yeah, I've been tempted in the past by the idea of buying, the modifiable gun cases where it comes and it's just a flat sheet of foam and then you can spray it with the chemical and press the gun into it and it takes the shape of the gun
Hmm.
and then it hardens or solidifies and then you have like a molded case for your gun. I've been tempted by the idea of buying that and pressing 4 shakuhachi or 5 shakuhachi into the foam and being like they've each got their own spot. But the cases that you've shown me, the actual intended for shakuhachi, are pretty nice. They're pretty comfy looking for the flutes.
Yeah. Well, you have one now. I gifted you one.
Yes, and I have nowhere to go, but yes, I have a hard case now. So, yeah,
Well,
it's very nice.
at some point in the future, you'll be using it. Who knows
I
where?
keep pointing at it, telling my wife that like, see those empty slots? That means I need that many new flutes.
Ah, I've been discovered. Eric says here that he uses a rifle case and it holds about 8 shakuhachi from 1.6 to 2.4.
That's awesome.
Yeah, some of those rifle cases are really nice too. Of course, they are almost like indestructible. You can throw them out of a 10-story building and they'd still. I mean, the latches would be broke, but everything on the inside's good.
Yeah. Well, when I played in a band in Korea, our bass player played a big 5-string bass, and he had a case. It was a bass case, but it looked like a rifle case. And he several times traveling in Asia had a heck of a time getting it back from the people because they were like, "Well, it's a gun," and he's like, "It's not. Did you X-ray it? It's not a gun." And there were 2 times, once in China and once in Korea, where he had to go and like kind of be interrogated and like open the case and take everything out. Like they were taking out all the accessories and everything because they just couldn't believe that it was an instrument case.
Yeah. Janie's got a gun.
Yeah. And you come to a place like Japan and try to get into Japan with a rifle, there's a lot of paperwork involved.
Well, you know what I found out is that you can literally walk onto an airplane with like animal skulls and human skulls, by the way. Like human bones, like dried human bones or any sort of animal bones, you are okay to walk on with any flight.
Cool.
So, in case first, I don't know. Okay, well, actually, I was looking this up because I was worried about certain types of materials going on. Interestingly enough, one of the things you are not supposed to bring is you're not supposed to bring ink sticks. So like sumi sticks, for example, that you'd use for calligraphy. Those are a big no, and I had no idea why. But there's apparently some of them. Some of them have certain chemicals and specifically Indian inks that are harmful or something like that. And Eric is saying, so you're saying there shouldn't be any flesh hanging from the bones. Yes, in general,
it's just a good rule for life.
Yeah, it's just a good rule for life because there's a lot of disease and bacteria that can happen that way. It's just for the safety of yourself and passengers on board.
Yeah.
Never said anything about bone marrow though.
Right. Well, knowing that you can take human skulls on the plane will be a great comfort. My wife, the small feral forest creature, will be happy to hear that she can take dried animal bones on an airplane without too much trouble.
And she can have her seance in the back.
She doesn't do seances. That's so 19th century, John.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, I think
she's not a Wiccan.
No. I think that the people that actually traffic bones, like that's a thing on eBay, the selling and buying of bones and curio of curiosities. People who want to have like weird cabinets in their house full of taxidermied bats and that sort of thing. Those are my people.
Okay, oh my gosh, you are going. One of these days, I'm going to have to introduce you to my sister and brother, my brother-in-law. My sister collects something very interesting that I think that you would absolutely love, and I'll give you one chance to guess it. I know you're not going to get it right, but I just want you to guess and see what it might be.
Is it a taxidermy thing?
It is a taxidermy thing.
Oh, okay. So does she collect the little mice in costumes?
No, she doesn't. But it's pretty damn close to that. Okay, so that's already impressive. What she does is she collects bad taxidermy jobs.
Oh, that's awesome.
And like,
that is awesome.
they're really funny. Like, man, she's got a good collection. So then people look at it, they're like, what the hell is all this stuff? It's like you can get, and sometimes they go really expensive because the jobs are so bad. Yeah. And so it like has this reverse effect where they become more expensive.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes just ghastly, poorly mounted taxidermy is hysterical. if you've ever seen the little mice in costume, that is art.
Oh yeah, it's like the dinner for schmucks. And sorry for coughing so much. I just got over influenza A, and a great way to lose weight, by the way.
Yeah, well, and if you're gonna have influenza, get the Class A version,
Yeah, you
right? Don't
definitely. Yeah, get the one
don't
that's.
fool around.
Yeah, don't fool around. You don't want that B. So
Yeah.
Eric says that my sister needs a psychiatrist for her taxidermy collection. It's actually pretty cool.
I actually really enjoy that kind of stuff. I had a friend back in high school who was into raptors,
Okay.
and he had a red tail hawk. He had the license in California to have a red tail hawk, and I thought that was cool. And then he invited me over to his house once to see the Muse, which is the building your hawk lives in, and showed me that. And then we went into his bedroom, and I was wholly unprepared for the number of mounted skeletons he had in his bedroom.
Oh man.
I was like, whoa. And he's like, yeah, well, after the hawk has his way with the rabbit or whatever, he's like,
Mm-hmm.
I just thought, what can I do with all these bones? And 10 years later, here we are. It's like, okay, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird, but it's also, I appreciate the artistry.
Well, at least it's not like it's not wasteful. That's at least there's something positive from it.
Sure, sure. And I don't think, I mean, my inspection was cursory, but I don't think any of the bones I saw there looked like they came from people, so I felt okay.
Maybe it is just a large cover up, and it's just like the reason why it's thousands of rabbit and all these other things is just to hide what the true bones are hidden there.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's that story about Ben Franklin. One of Ben Franklin's homes in the 1990s. They were doing archaeological work in the basement, and they found like hundreds of human remains.
Wow.
And people freaked out. They're like, Ben Franklin was a serial killer. No, it turns out that Ben Franklin's home was also long after Ben Franklin was deceased. That house was used as a medical school.
Interesting.
And yeah, and those were cadaver study remains that had been interred in the basement.
So to bring this back to a musical, yeah, we'll bring it to a musical thing here, in which is, do you know the story of Haydn's skull?
Haydn's skull? No.
Yes. So Joseph Haydn, his skull was actually stolen from his body shortly after his death in 1809. And the people who took it were actually doing it. They were trying to they were doing pseudoscience. They were measuring all the bumps on his skull to see how like different points of like what is that called, phrenology?
Phrenology.
Yeah. But when even though they got caught about a decade later, what ended up happening is that they never got punished. And so for about 150 years, the skull just kept being passed on from owner to owner. And then finally, in 1954, they took the skull and put it back with his body.
Wow.
So,
are you familiar with the Jeremy Bentham's head?
are we going to go on to a whole entire... I tried to bring it back to music for a second.
I'm just saying, there's a tradition in Europe of heads going missing. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Well, were they doing phrenology?
I didn't know about Haydn. That's interesting.
Yeah, Joseph Haydn. He had his skull was missing for 150 years.
Wow, that's crazy. And who buys that? You're at a party with fellow music lovers. You're talking about your mementos.
Well,
yes, and I have this baton that was used by this famous composer. Oh, and here I have Haydn's skull.
Well, people, there was a bunch of people who had locks of Beethoven's hair. So but the thing is that locks of hair were usually a very close memento for people who had just recently died.
Right.
So, I mean, that makes a little bit more... Like, maybe today we might see that as a little bit morbid and strange, but back in the 1700s and 1800s, it was very popular. I think even up until the 1900s, it was very popular, too.
Yeah, Victorian hair jewelry is a very niche interest, but if you go out there and search for it, there are tons of pieces of Victorian jewelry that have the hair of the deceased worked into the jewelry. As mementos of a past relative or whatever. So yeah, but I just can't. I mean, I can't imagine having a human skull, especially a human skull of a famous person, like just on a mantle in your house. You know, it's so strange. Anyway, well, doesn't one of our one of the members of the studio, doesn't he have a bone shakuhachi ish or bone kana or something like that?
Yes, he does. He has one of those, but he also has an ostrich shakuhachi too. So
Ostrich, like from an ostrich leg bone?
yeah, it's an ostrich femur that was turned into a shakuhachi.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I told my wife long ago that I wanted her to keep my skull after I passed away, and the laws of the United States are very strict about that. That basically just can't happen. Even if I put it in my will, it can't happen.
You
But
you can
living
have
abroad,
you can be turned into a diamond though.
yeah, yeah, that doesn't quite have the impact. I wanted to be sitting up on the the mantelpiece overseeing family activities.
One of my well, I shouldn't tell this story, but I just won't mention any names. There's a certain person who is close to the family who had passed away, and he wanted to be blown up after he died, and so they took his ashes and they put him into a firework and they blew him up, and so
Wow.
and that was legal somehow.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard about people having their remains put into shotgun shells and fired. The person was a skeet shooter and he wanted his friends in the skeet shooting club to fire his remains over the firing range, that's kind of sweet, I suppose. But
It's a sweet in your own little special sort of way.
yeah, well, that shakuhachi or the flute that I'm thinking of that was made of bone, that particular member of the studio told me, he said it's hard to play because not because it's not made well, but because it smells like barbecue. It makes you hungry.
Oh gosh. Well, that brings us to the a little bit over the hour now for this live stream, and we did get a bunch of Shakuhachi stuff done. We had an interesting story about Haydn's skull that was missing for 150 years, along with the Streisand effect. What is it called?
Yeah, Streisand effect.
The
Eric
Streisand effect.
asks, weren't most shakuhachi masters burned at the pyre with their shakuhachi?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, cremated with. There's also a lot of stuff that people get cremated with.
Yeah.
Uh,
A lot of things that
there are
they'll get burned
lots
with.
of different things that burn with people.
Yeah, but what used to happen is their students would just come up and put a really cheap shakuhachi in place of it and then take it. That happened a lot. So
Yeah, it's a shame to have a really nice shakuhachi go up in flames.
yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in to this week's live stream. We will be joined again next week in the same sort of system with our in-house studio representative, Linus Dume. And next week will also be at the updated time of 4 p.m. Chicago time. So until then, roll for 10 and see you guys